Addiction can therefore be seen as a developmental cascade, often foreshadowed by difficulties in childhood, always boosted by the narrowing of perspective with recurrent cycles of acquisition and loss. And like other developmental outcomes, addiction isn't easy to reverse because it rides on the restructuring of the brain. And like other developmental outcomes, it arises from neuroplasticity, but its net effect is a reduction of further plasticity, at least for a while. Addiction is a habit, which, like many other habits, gets entrenched through a decrease in self-control. So neuroplasticity is a really important concept to understand in terms of how we work with trauma. We don't have time to go into it too much now, but I really encourage you to find out more about it, to read Mark's work, and also Norman Doidge. Wonderful work. Helps us to understand how there's a lot of hope in how we can help people develop new neural pathways. At the same time, if you travel down those neural pathways too long, too often, they become like ruts, literally, in the brain. And this is where we get into addictions and trauma feedback loops. Mark has a really pretty simple and good way of describing the brain regions that are relevant to addiction in the biology of desire. The bridge of the ship, for example, is the dorsal lateral prefrontal cortex. He makes it user-friendly. And this is the latest model that I have of working with the nervous system. We call it the 6 Fs. And we're going to go into this. So here's the beautiful vagus nerve. You can see how long it is. Starts at the brain stem and goes way down into the body, bringing up 80% of the information it brings up is about what's happening in the organs in the body. And this is our way of being able to monitor how safe we are in the world, which you can see is central to understanding trauma and addiction and what's happening in the world for all of us today in particular. So here is the ventral branch of the vagus nerve. This is the part that's above the diaphragm, extends right up into our face, into what Steve calls, Porges, the social engagement system. And so when we started off the webinar and I said to you, I can give you cues of safety in my smile, and you can give me cues of safety in the hearts and the thumbs up that come up through the screen. And this is what happens when we feel safe, right? When we feel safe enough, we can live in experience in the ventral branch of the vagus and settle into the body. And so here we feel present and we feel more deeply connected to ourselves and to other people. And we work with these different states in terms of accessing a whole felt sense of how the body carries them. And we're going to do this in one of the practices. Here's flight fight. This is the sympathetic branch of the nervous system, where people are highly activated and mobilized, right? The body's mobilized with adrenaline. Either we're going to fight back or we're going to run away. And this system is hierarchical. So if the first place we go, if we're threatened, is to sympathetic. But if we can't fight and we can't run away, then the body is designed to take us over here to the dorsal state. Oh, sorry, sometimes this slide is a little sensitive. Here we go. It's great, but it's more sensitive. So in this dorsal state, we're disengaged and we shut down and we feel avoidant and this is the place where addictions really bring relief. Now, we also have lots of blended, or we call hybrid states in the nervous system. We're actually developing more and more awareness and research around these different blended states, and new ones keep emerging. Fawn, for instance, is a new one that Dr. Porges is talking about. I've been thinking I need to add fawn into the 6Fs. But for now, the blended states that we have are fun and fired up over here. So a blended state is a blending of some ventral energy and some sympathetic. And the nervous system can do that, which is really cool. So for example, if you hear kids playing in the school grounds or something, and you hear them laughing. So they're mobilized, they've got some sympathetic energy and they're running around and they feel safe. And then at some point, somebody gets hurt, and you can hear both fight when they get angry and flight when they might start to cry and run home, hopefully to somebody who's safe to help them. So that's the fun place. Fired up is a place in the body where we go to when we're debating or we're advocating or we're passionate about something, and it has meaning for us. It's important to us. So there's sympathetic energy with some ventral there too. And that's where I feel when I'm teaching. Usually I feel right now in fired up kind of. Flowing is a state. I can get this to close. Oh, sorry. No, I can't get it to close. Flowing is a state where, that's right. Where it's a mixture of dorsal. So we've got the immobilized, the stillness, but we have this beautiful ventral energy that's in there as well. And in this place, we feel safe to be still. So examples of that might be meditating, focusing, lovemaking, prayer, places where it feels quiet and safe to not have to move. Beautiful parts of being alive. And then up here, we call this fixate. This is the freeze state. The freeze state is a blending of sympathetic constriction in the body and dorsal shutting down in the body. So it's a stuck place. This is where addictions happen, right? Addictions are really the propellers that shift us from the sympathetic state back to the dorsal state and back again. And this pathway, the upper part of the model, is what we call the trauma feedback loop. So in this feedback loop, you're functioning in a way where you're missing all the goodies in life. And when we explain this to clients and they download it and they put it on their phone or their fridge, it's hard to see that, but it's also very real. And it helps people to understand that they're really losing out on the very best things that life has to offer. You can download all of these on my website I think we sent them to you. So here's just a description of the different states that you have. We use body cards. Maybe some of you downloaded those. In the practice we do in a few minutes, you can use them. So here's an example of a flight-fight body card. You can see how powerful it is to use the body cards because color and shape is a big part of embodiment. And it helps us to be able to really make sense out of an experience that's happening. And here's a quote from Dr. Porges. Feelings of safety are not equivalent to objective measurements of safety, which could pragmatically be defined as the removal of threat. Feeling safe is more akin to the felt sense described by Eugene Gendlin. Although Gendlin, as a philosopher and psychologist, was not physiologically oriented, he described a felt sense and shift as not just a mental experience, but also a physical one. So there's the way in which bringing together interoception and neuroception comes into the model. And when I had a chance to talk to Dr. Porges about this, I said, I think these felt shifts are shifts in the ANS. And he was like, yes. And that was an important moment for me. So here's some examples of body cards in flock, in the ventral state. Interesting to note that every one of them has some yellow in it. Interesting. So the two embodied processes, interoception with felt sensing and mindfulness and meditation, and neuroception, the autonomic nervous system response. And focusing often creates a felt shift in neuroception. So we might come in feeling dorsal. We wake up through focusing with our partner in connection, in co-regulation, and we shift through sympathetic and down into ventral. And we feel awake and alive and present again. Beautiful experiences. And this is an example of a focusing session where a client in partnership is shifting from a dorsal heavy state on the left. You see this black bars. This is a really dorsal kind of state in the body, low and depressed, self-loathing and shutting down. And then shifting with some focusing, experiencing, but she didn't shift into a ventral state. She went up into a sympathetic flight-fight state of wanting to eat. So this is a real food addiction place for her. She became very excited. You see these bubbles in her head. But also you can see in the description that the bubbles are more about first excitement and then a kind of anxiety that comes with butterflies. And then over towards the bottom right, a binging and an addiction state and a crashing. So you can see this is a very nice example of the trauma feedback loop. Back and forth between dorsal and sympathetic and back to dorsal and back to sympathetic. And so, of course, a focusing session doesn't always take us to a ventral place. Some things are long-term projects, and people become, of course, better skilled at being able to find ventral energy